All right, here's the exciting news. Kiwis have the lowest glycemic index of any of the fruits. Okay, so what is a glycemic index? Well, it basically means how fast your blood sugar is going to rise after you eat something. Now, how is that different than how much sugar does something contain? Well, it turns out that how slowly something like a kiwi is digested and then the sugar enters your bloodstream is what makes the difference in glycemic index. So, does this actually matter? Well, for those of you who like to track your blood sugar with a continuous glucose monitor, it's a fun experiment to play around with, and you might be shocked with something that might have a potentially low sugar content actually has a very high glycemic index. So, the glycemic index goes from 0 to 100. Now, a typical kiwi has a glycemic index, GI, of around 39. Now, that doesn't mean anything, but compare that to a ripe banana, which has a glycemic index of 62, or watermelon, which has a glycemic index of 76. Whoa! And watermelon, for instance, has a very low sugar content. And yet it's basically pure, it's like drinking sugar water. I see the damage watermelons do in my patients' blood work. A number of my patients, particularly in season, go on a watermelon kick. Why? Tastes great. And they've been assured that there's very little sugar in watermelon. And yet every one of them, I see much higher insulin levels, much higher glucose levels, and much more disordered cholesterol numbers and insulin resistance because they went on that low sugar watermelon kick. So why kiwi? And why does it have a low glycemic index? Well, it's loaded with fiber, prebiotic fiber. So eating a whole kiwi with the skin on actually increases its fiber content by a whopping 50% more if you eat it without its skin. Now, the good news is that eating a whole kiwi, this is a green kiwi, with the skin on increases its fiber content by a whopping 50% more than if you eat it without its skin. So one skin-on green kiwi has 3.5 grams of fiber, while a skin-on gold kiwi, which is actually much smaller, has about 3 grams of fiber. Now, to compare, you'd have to eat a whole cup of cut-up strawberries for the same amount of fiber. And I hope everyone knows now that strawberries are the number one on the dirty dozen list of herbicide and pesticide-ridden fruit. Number one. Now, many studies have looked at giving people kiwis to eat, and it shows that they get improved gut microbiome diversity. Everyday consumption of kiwi fruits, especially with the whole fruit with peel, was shown to improve lipid homeostasis and gut microbiota diversity. Why? It turns out that the fiber in kiwis seem to be really loved by our gut bacteria, particularly the good ones. And in fact, the polyphenols in kiwi also selectively increases the better bacteria in our gut. Another study in humans showed that kiwi fruit is a prebiotic that selectively enhances the growth of intestinal lactic acid bacteria. Now, people have heard of lactic acid bacteria. It turns out that, as you'll read in the Gut-Brain Paradox, we have, hopefully, a very good balance between good and bad bacteria. And they're supposed to be there, bad ones as well as good ones. But it's when that balance gets out of whack that the problems occur. And we can actually measure that balance in my patients. And interestingly enough, lactobacilli are a bunch of the really good guys in your gut. And so many of my patients, they don't have very many lactobacilli. So eating kiwis are a great way to increase those lactobacilli. In fact, The gold kiwi is so good at this, there are even companies that sell gold kiwi supplements. Now, here's a fun fact. According to one study, eating kiwi can actually help you fall asleep quicker and stay asleep longer. They actually contain vitamin B6, which can help tired muscles relax, and they're a great source of magnesium, a mineral that's crucial for getting good sleep. Now, there's a study involving volunteers, 25 people, who self-reported sleep disturbances. This study demonstrated that consumption of 2 kiwi fruit 1 hour before bedtime for a month significantly improved actigraphy measured total sleep time. That's a fancy way of doing a sleep study in a sleep lab, by 17%, and sleep efficiency by 2.5%. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it was actually very statistically significant. So, survey says one of the best fruits you can eat is a kiwi fruit. How do you eat it with the peel? Here's the easiest way to do it. Chop the ends off with a knife, and when you start, cut it in quarters, and then eat it as a sliver. Eventually, cut the ends off and eat it like an apple. Now, just because it's probably the best fruit you can eat doesn't mean to go hog wild and eat them all day. But from now on, I want you to replace that saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, with a kiwi a day keeps the doctor away. Just remember, don't peel them, eat the fuzzy part. And some of the best polyphenols are in the skin, as well as those gut buddy boosting prebiotics. More amazing episodes just like this one. Watch now. The best and worst fruits to support your health. Okay, as you might already know, I have 3 rules when it comes to consuming fruit.